Warning, the following program is extremely janky. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome back to the only podcast with meow meow, ice cream so good, slurp slurp, gang 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 gang. Citation needed. I'm your host Troy.
And I'm Aaron.
Future of media right there. Modern entertainment.
I swear, the online space is only becoming more cerebral the further we get into it.
Yeah. We're really approachinating. We're approachinating. Wow, jeez. I have been watching too many TikTok streams.
You know what? That sounds like it would be a good conspiracy theory. The approachinating.
Yeah.
Klaus Schwab is causing the approachinating. We should make that a thing. Anyways.
How's it going, man?
Pretty good. Can't complain,
Yeah, same. I mean, I could complain, and I probably will various times throughout this episode, but I shouldn't complain. That's what I usually like to say.
Well, we'll complain about others, not ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Regarding you asked about yourself.
As if there even is anything about me to complain about. Come on. Oi. I'm just kidding. Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't get the reference, TikTok streaming is a thing, and it's just as awful and surreal as you might expect. It's terrible. I hate it. I'm sorry if you like it. I'm yucking your yum shamelessly. It makes me want to cry. It causes me psychic pain.
Do you know who her top contributor was?
No.
Timbaland. #1 fan. Literally.
That's not a joke. That's a real
thing.
There's no punchline.
No punchline. Timbaland gave that girl thousands of dollars.
Okay. All right.
So she would go, gang, 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 gang. Yeah.
Go off, I guess. I mean, get the bag. Yeah, that's something else.
Oh, that's the thing, too. I mean, on one hand, yeah, I don't like when people contribute crap to the internet, but, you got to get your money somehow. The real question is why the hell are people watching,
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's got to be somebody.
A fair number. She's making bank. It's not somebody. It's
a lot of somebodies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. I think I heard it referred to. I don't know if this is the actual trend, what it's referred to on TikTok, or if this is a pejorative thing. But I've heard it referred to as NPC content, and I just think that's so funny because on the one hand, it does accurately describe there's scripted events. You press this button and you give this sticker, and the human being goes gang gang, ice cream so good, and it's that is actual NPC behavior, but also in the sense of how red pillars always say oh, you're such an NPC. Okay, this is this is as close to that being true as I think it's ever been, because it's you go walk into Bellathor's shop in Skyrim, he's everything for sale. It's such a predictable scripted event. It's yeah, sheesh.
We should do one in which we just do Skyrim lines. I used to get this arrow. We'll have the arrow
emoji. Yeah. What's the guy? Oh God, I forget his name. But there's that guy, and he's do you get to the Cloud District very often?
Oh, fuck.
What am I saying? Of course you don't. Nazim.
That's it. Yeah.
I played a mod one time where it was a mod pack, and one of the mods I didn't know all of the mods in the pack. Right, it was just a thing. I just installed it. It did them all for me, and I guess one of the mods in the pack was just a hating on Nazim mod. So when you go talk to him, he would randomly just fall over and just take damage and stuff. And one of the scripted events was when he says that line, he says do you get to the Cloud District very often? What am I saying? Of course you don't. He shoots into the sky as if a giant just came and curb stomped him. He just launches hundreds of feet in the air. I don't know why. When it first happened, I was for a second, I was is my shit glitched right now? What's going on? But then I realized, oh my God, this is actually great.
That's fucking hilarious, actually. I'm imagining that.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find a clip of it and throw it on. That's fucking so funny.
So, on more serious things, what are we talking about first here?
Well, we got a bit of a follow-up. We talked a couple episodes ago about the Microsoft Activision Blizzard King deal. And it turns out that the FTC was not successful in blocking the deal. I don't know if it's I don't know what kind of judge it is. I think it was a particular state that they bring it in first, and then if they appeal, it goes to the Supreme Court. Or I'm not sure how that actually works. But in any case, they lost the case, and the judge made a pretty straightforward statement about like why the judge thinks that they lost. And it was like, it was pretty scathing actually. It was like, not only did you not prove that there's going to be damage to consumers, you actually proved that the opposite is true. You actually, like, this is what the judge is claiming, is that they proved that it would actually be better for consumers if this deal went through. And so, yeah. So there's a lot of, oh God, we're going to talk about Kotaku. I hope you're ready. There's this Kotaku article I read, and the title of the article is something along the lines of like, FTC blasted by gamers and Republicans. And it was like, Xbox gamers and Republicans are mad at the FTC for trying to regulate or some shit like that. It was like, holy crap. Like, as soon as I read the headline, I was like, God, this is going on next week's episode. I swear to God. Because it's just so, man, it's so, I still, by the way, I still don't know if I've decided how I feel about this purchase yet. I'm still a little bit on the fence. I'm leaning kind of in favor of like, yes, it's good, but I'm not fully decided. But that being said, some of the presuppositions in this article were just so trash. Like, the first line of the article is like, it's like, oh, gamers are mad at the FTC because they're trying to aggressively regulate. It's like, no. First of all, gamers largely don't give a shit about the FTC. They just care about this event right now, number one. And number two, the people who are shit-talking the FTC, it's because they're ineffectual. It's because they have not been doing anything good. Like, they've been losing cases over and over. Like, it's because they were ineffective in this case. They didn't do a good job. And that's like fair. Like, you should be able to provide that criticism. It's without being like, "Oh, you're just a gamer Republican." It's like, whoa, hold on. Like,
so yeah, there's a couple of things there. Firstly, yeah, I'm totally uncomfortable with the comfortability that Kotaku has just marrying all gamers to the right. Yeah. I mean, if your intent isn't to push people to the right, why would you use that? I mean, it's language and rhetoric that only reinforces these trends that we see.
As if Democrats aren't capable of being critical of the FTC, or as if non-gamers aren't capable. Like, it's just like, and
it's also saying gamers and Republicans, right?
Yeah,
and that's the thing is it's saying like, this is like, that might not be their intent to push gamers more to the right. But a lot of these things, I mean, this, coming back to the actual content of the article and especially the way it was written, I kind of sensed, because there's a couple of things that I do disagree with you about the actual points that they're trying to get across. But in regards to the writing style itself, it was so condescending.
Oh, yeah. That's Kotaku for you, man. It's wild to me that a publication that is claims to be like a publication for gamers somehow just manages to like hate all gamers. Like, somehow it's just like,
who's your audience? Who is your audience?
Yeah,
who are you writing this for?
They lump everybody into this big giant group, and it's like, what are you talking about? Like, oh man, I have a lot of very strong opinions about the quality of Kotaku.
Here, this is the line that got me. It didn't take long for some of the loudest voices in the Xbox community to pile on. Lena Khan is getting fried, roasted, cooked, and buttered, wrote influencer Uni Sensei, retweeting hearing footage like it was an E3 press conference. Now, has this person ever been on Twitter? That's just what Twitter comment. Every time that there's any type of, like, anytime I see congressional footage on Twitter, there's color commentary along with it that isn't of the type you would expect from, say, a publication. Mm-hmm. That's the nature of Twitter. So it's like it was an E3 press conference. It's very much like, stay in your lane, gamer. You shouldn't have any opinions about anything else.
Go back to your games.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's
like, what are you trying to say? Like,
now it's interesting. You brought up the courts thing. I would imagine that the courts specifically, they would have went to, so all the courts that they're going through are federal courts. They're not state courts.
Okay.
The way it would have probably been is that, do you know where the company, I would imagine the company's based in California, maybe in Northern California.
It's like Sacramento.
Yeah, Sacramento or San Francisco. So they probably went to the Northern California, or like, I think it would be a district judge, which is a federal judge, but in a specific district. and then it would have went to probably the Ninth Circuit, which is a circuit court, which is where it would have appealed to, and then it would go to the Supreme Court. But it would all be under federal courts. In the United States, they have, like in Canada, the court system is kind of more integrated than that in Canada, where the Supreme Court, like something happens on a provincial basis, like let's say there's a criminal charge in provincial court, usually something that would be significant. Provincial court judges in Manitoba are appointed by the province, and then anything above that are appointed by the Prime Minister. But it's very complex. The province, you know what? I'm not even gonna get lost in all that crap.
Sure, yeah.
But the point is the United States is an interesting sort of parallel system where some things are tried in purely federal courts,
right?
From the bottom up. And this would be one of those examples because this has got to do with interstate commerce and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, so it's antitrust,
yeah. Now, in regards to the actual failures in court, I actually would, slightly push back and say that doesn't necessarily speak to the inefficacy of the Commissioner Khan or whatever her name is, and the FTC per se. It's more the inefficacy of antitrust legislation, right? They see an issue which I think that is reasonable, and we've discussed this before. I think there's reason to be concerned about that degree of consolidation in any industry, and that's what they're designed to fight against, is over consolidation and the impacts of that.
Yeah.
And I think I've discussed this before but I realized that I discussed it on things that we never released, so you guys don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
A select privileged few.
Yeah, you gotta pay for the Patreon to get that footage.
Yeah, the early years, we'll call it.
Yeah. The early years. It was like 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, early weeks, whatever.
The early weeks, yeah. But basically, the way the original antitrust legislation in like 1912, 1910, when they broke up the big trusts, like Standard Oil was busted into 6 companies and U.S. Steel and those sorts of things, the anti-monopoly rules were written in a way that the evidence of monopoly and the harm of monopoly are harm to consumers directly, like price fixing, right? Like the classic examples of basically cartel behavior, right?
Right.
Now, with a lot of these things, we don't have an effective way to fight monopolization, but we might see that they're like in the legislation that already exists, right? So an example might be Amazon, where you say, well, sure, Amazon might be strangling a bunch of small businesses and developing a monopoly in retail, but the end result for consumers are lower prices, right? And so because that's the metric by which we're judging this whole scenario, there's nothing they can really do about it. The legislation, there's no space to say that there's a harm to consumers. But I would argue that there are social harms to monopolization, even if they're not necessarily a one-to-one
or
sort
explicit.
Explicit and in the form of price fixing, right? I mean, the point is that in the digital space, I mean, we need a whole host of new legislation with regards to the digital space. It's kind of the Wild West, and we're still figuring that out. So I would say that the real problem is that Congress, in the United States, Congress hasn't even dealt with this issue meaningfully yet. That isn't to say that they should block this purchase. That's another thing entirely. Right. But I guess my point is that the FTC doesn't have the tools available to do the job that it's mandated to do, right? So
I just hate how it's like it's such a like the Kotaku article. It's such a blatant framing of the matter. Like it's like Xbox fans. Like really? Like Xbox? Like so you're saying that people are upset about this, about the FTC trying to appeal because they like their Xbox? Like, I mean, I'm sure some people, but like it's just so disingenuous. It's like anybody who has a legitimate criticism of the way things are going down with this deal and the FTC stuff and everything, it's like, well, you're just an Xbox fanboy.
Yeah, it should have just been like, so Republicans and virgin incels tweeting from their mother's basement are against this deal.
Basically, yeah. It's like, okay, whoa. The problem that I have with the appeal is that, like, from what I understood, like, I don't know, like, if the first judge makes a statement and the statement the judge makes isn't like, it's not a very tempered, is that the word? Like, it's not a very mild-mannered response. It's not like a very neutral, like, I reviewed everything and I ended up deciding blah blah blah. It's like you failed. not only did you fail, you actually helped them. Like you failed to demonstrate this, but you actually demonstrated the opposite of what you were trying to demonstrate. And that's like, okay. Like, and you're gonna appeal? Like, what do you think? What do you have? Some new evidence, some new tactics, some new, like, the purpose of an appeal, my understanding is that you think you can get a better result in a higher court, and maybe with some modifications to your strategy. But like, what could possibly change this? Like, that, from my perspective, that's where I see the criticism of trying to appeal it, is that like you failed so badly, like what this seems like you're just going, it's just almost a setup to fail again. You know what I mean?
It could be, and I think that I don't remember, but the circuit court came back with a, like,
they denied it. Yeah, they denied the appeal.
Oh,
yeah.
They denied the appeal. They didn't even hear the appeal.
They denied the appeal.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Yeah. Well, then there you go. I mean,
that was like 2 days ago, I think.
Yeah. So, and you're not saying that they heard the appeal and decided on the appeal.
No. They denied the actual appeal.
Yes.
The bid for the appeal was denied.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was the point I was going to make. Is I mean, ultimately, an organization, especially a government agency that's trying to affect an outcome, again, based on their mandate, kind of might be required to try and do
appeal,
that, right?
Yeah.
That might be kind of
Could be, yeah.
an instance of them doing their due diligence. And the point I was going to make, because I didn't realize that they refused to hear the appeal. I had assumed that they had heard the appeal and then they had decided against it. But the point is that various courts, and especially higher courts, have the opportunity to decide what they do and do not hear, right? And the idea is that, well, this is actually potentially, I mean, the reason a court would choose to hear an appeal often, especially in like a high-profile case, is because this is something that will be precedent-setting it, right? This will determine a bunch of cases in the future, because based on the way the United States and Canada both utilize the common law system from Great Britain, where stare decisis is the term for basically the decisions of previous courts, especially higher courts, bind on later courts in their decision making. Right. So the point about appealing and trying to appeal it as high as you can, if you don't get the outcome you want, because presumably either way, like, had they heard the appeal and decided, then obviously Blizzard and Activision would be like, okay, fuck it, bring it to the Supreme Court then, right?
Yeah.
They're going to try to appeal it too, right?
Yeah,
because
that's a good point. Yeah,
there are institutions with very different interests in this case, and it's up to the courts to decide where the law stands. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where the court decides what it hears based on what it thinks is important for the nation and for future decisions going forward, especially the Supreme Court, right? They want to set a specific precedent.
It could be that I'm just fucking mad at games journalism.
Yeah.
Like, it could just be that I'm just super salty, not in like a cringy, like Gamergate, like racist, sexist kind of way. Like that, all that stuff is cringe and awful. In more of like this is objectively bad. It's like, it's almost as if the people who are, and by the way, when I say games journalism, I mean specifically like publications.
Can I ask for a little clarity?
Sure.
You said this is bad. When you say this is bad, do you mean the case that the FTC was building, or the type of journalism that Kotaku?
The journalism that Kotaku do. Yeah, I actually, and interestingly, like, I don't know that I actually have super strong opinions about the actual FTC and how they handled the case and them appealing or not, whatever. Like, I was more kind of just like playing devil's advocate to show that, like, the bias is just so insane in this article. It's like, well, it's not journalism anymore. It's not. It's like, it's.
I think that points to exactly my concern, where you're like, they're almost enticing, or like incentivizing for you to disagree with them, and therefore pushing you in the direction of the people that they're disparaging and are obvious, like they're pushing you right in a way. Not that they are, not that you're moving towards the right. But my point is because they present it in such a bad faith manner and are instantly like basically degrading you and I as we read it.
Yeah.
Right? And be like, you guys go back to jerking off and
play gamers.
Yeah. Then it's having the effect that I was worried at the instance of this conversation it would have on the general public. Is that, you read that, it's like, well then, like, and you're just insulted by it, reasonably so. So you're going to take a contrary position to them. Right? So it's what are you trying to achieve through your journalism? I think if they had approached the subject matter with a greater degree of respect for their audience, and as well, and for people in general, and actually try to explain their point rather than just saying, oh, just like prima facie, these guys are dorks.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right? Like
treating it like an E3 conference.
Yeah, like it's like they don't actually appear to really go into great detail about, any of the details that we're discussing in regards to, the difficulty with antitrust legislation and why. Like they don't make the argument I just made in regards to, how antitrust legislation, there's a lag between.
It's
flawed and it's not designed for 21st century monopoly issues. They don't discuss any of that. They just say
Republicans, man.
Yeah, gamers and Republicans are dorks, and they just need to let this.
Yeah, I guess I'm a Republican now. Jeez, thanks, Kotaku. I didn't know that, but okay.
Yeah,
like what the? Yeah. And when I say that I have problems with games journalism, I do mean specifically like publications, like big websites, big companies where it's like they're an aggregate for news media. And they have journalists who just so happen to be reporting on games. That's what I mean. Because there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of independent content creators who I would consider journalists and who I would consider games journalists due to them reporting on games, posting reviews, opinion pieces. Like there's so many quality independent content creators. And I don't see this problem with independent content creators because they are... I don't know. This is going to sound so like wishy-washy, but it's almost as if they are gamers first and journalists second. It's like they're not approaching it as a journalist first and then a gamer. Now there are problems with that, right? Because that could mean that their journalistic technique would not be as high.
There's also maybe implicit biases.
Yeah, implicit
operating.
biases. But the idea is that like if you watch an independent content creator, you understand. Donkey did a video game Donkeys, and that content creator did a great video about game critics. And one of the arguments he makes is that he points to this guy who's like a film reviewer who's like a hyper contrarian. Like he like all the movies that everybody likes, he thinks are dog shit, and all the movies that everybody hates, he thinks are masterpieces of cinema. And he's like, this guy's ridiculous, but he's a good critic because he's consistent. If he says this movie sucks, you know that it's fucking great. And if he says this is the best movie of all time, you know to avoid it and not go see it because it's going to be a stinker. Like, and independent creators are like that. Independent creators, they have bias, but they're consistent. You can watch a series of videos that a person has, I'm talking about like a streamer or like a YouTube creator, and you can kind of understand their opinion on things. But journalism, like games journalism publications, they aren't like that. They don't. You read this publication and it's like, I don't know what to think of the interpretation of the game that's being reviewed. It's like, because it's written like a fucking English project. Like it's not written to, there's a word for it. It's almost self-aggrandizing. It's almost like, fucking look at me and all the fucking big words. I mean, I say that after I say self-aggrandizing, but like, it's all very fluffy and overly, what's the word for like super colorful, complicated language?
Flowery, yeah, I get it.
It's like flowery. It's very like
gilded. I don't know. Yeah, we're having to find flowery words to describe it.
Yeah, clearly we don't have this fucking problem. But yeah, it's like I
actually have that problem big time when you're talking about using all these. You got to use all these big fucking words. Don't look at my Substack.
Yeah,
fucking feeling the heat on that one. Well, one of the things that I really see in it too, reading it, is it's very editorialized. I mean, I kind of have. I have the opinion where it's like it appears like it was just trying to tell us facts, but it very much was guiding us to what we should feel and not providing any reason for why we should feel that way. Like it wasn't making an editorial argument but providing evidence to it. It was just engaging in editorialization around the topic where it's just like, look at these dorks, you know what I mean? And it's like, are you like maybe I'm incorrect, but I didn't see something saying this is in the opinion and editorial section. It read like they were trying to just report news, but editorialize in the process, which is like the quality of a tabloid. I mean, one of the issues I have here is that, and this I actually would, to a degree, blame audiences for as much as I would journalists. is that this is the kind of stuff we demand to a degree. I mean, obviously, this isn't the kind of stuff most gamers are demanding, but I think that a lot of these institutions, and this is my concern, right? I mean, you talk about independent content creators, and you're right, there's a lot of really good ones, but one of the things, and I think it really does and I'm not too familiar with the Gamergate stuff. I was kind of like drunk or asleep for all that. I don't know where I was,
It was a dark time.
Yeah, it was, right? And that's where, like, I was showing you this goofball Ian Miles Chong. I think that's where he kind of came to prominence, was like anti-feminism and et cetera, et cetera. So there is, and I can kind of just hear that, like, that's kind of where the Kotaku person's coming from, is that they have in their mind this idea of like the gamer is like an amalgam of this Gamergate toxicity, and they're not entirely wrong that there is a large cohort of that. But the problem is when you say everybody that's even critical of this regulatory issue are hate women, you know what I mean, or something like that's kind of the implication almost. It's like, well, you're gonna push them in that direction. You're gonna say, okay, well, I guess maybe Ian Miles Chong has something to say, right? And you're right. I trust your capacity to go to independent content creators and judge it. And I'm not saying others shouldn't, or that we should be censoring these things. But my point is a lot of people and a lot of gamers are going to be, because gamers are just like normal people, like they're the whole run the gamut of all kinds of people, including people with pretty high media illiteracy themselves, and they're incensed by this thing, and then they have a contrarian attitude, so they're going to maybe potentially be pushed towards independent content creators that are just pushing dog shit.
Yeah,
to use your favorite phrase. Which I love. You say it. I didn't say it with the force. Every time I hear you say the word dog shit, I'm like,
it's like not very like sponsor friendly or like ad friendly, but it just fucking feels so good. It's just like, God, this is a dog shit ass game. Oh, it's just like, it really hits. It's like so repugnant.
Yeah, exactly.
Man. Yeah, Kotaku is dog shit, dude. They're so bad. Oh man. Well, the other thing too is that, and I'll try and give them a little bit of credit, is that the incentive structure is a bit different, because the incentive for an independent content creator, while they do still have incentive to be ad friendly and like get clicks, do clickbait and stuff like that, that is part of it. But they're a lot more incentivized to build a community and build an audience and build recurring audience, in the sense that like a particular content creator is incentivized to be consistent, because that they will create consistency in their community, the people who come back and watch their videos all the time. And whereas a publication like Kotaku, I don't know that, like, maybe that is part of it for them. Maybe that's like that consistency is part of it, but a lot of it is just like literally getting the one click, right? Because once they get that one click and the ad, you scroll past ads, that's it. It's done, right? They got whereas with the YouTube content creators and streamers and stuff, it's like they're much more incentivized for like, keep coming back and watching my stuff over and over and over again, right?
It's interesting to say that, because I would actually imagine that a lot of the reason why they're so editorial in regards to something like this and have such a strong opinion about, the kinds of people that would be disagreeing with the FTC is actually a form of consistency in itself. Actually, I would imagine that they have it's like, I really see a lot of their own biases coming out of the page, and my guess is that's part of the flavor of a lot of their writing in this day and age, because maybe they have they've obviously alienated a large part of the gaming community, but they might have like a segment of the gaming community and non-gamers who come to them because they have negativistic views with regards to this, this archetype of the gamer, which, isn't entirely incorrect.
Yeah, again, to give them credit again, like it's important. I'm practicing my dialectical thinking, Aaron. Okay, give me some credit here. To give them, a bit of leeway, is that a lot of the stuff, maybe even a majority of the dialogue that was happening, I say dialogue very lightly, in the Gamergate era, was horrible, toxic, awful stuff. Like a ton of it was like just vile. And so I can't necessarily blame them if there's this like subconscious almost like force field that's being built up to be like, oh, well, can't be too nice to the fucking gamers, right? Like because they might just do that stuff again. It's like, so maybe that's part of it. I'm sure that's part of it, because not to say that everybody who's there as a writer now was during Gamergate, but I would
It's an
presume that
institutional
it's,
thing.
yeah, it's institutional, right? So yeah, that it could be that there's this like almost like self-preservation to it, right? Where it's like you just inherently have this like dislike of this whole group because of this awful stuff that happened. And yeah, that's human condition, man. I guess I can't really blame somebody for that.
But I do think that there's an element to which it is the negative end too, where it's like, well, we've built a niche, and our niche is shitting on gamers.
Yeah.
So let's shit on them, boys.
I have to be so careful about all this stuff that I'm like, yeah, fuck games journalists, because like I really don't want to be lumped in with that whole like misogynist, like that messed up group. I don't want to be part of that. But there are a lot of things where it's like, you know, there's like the meme about like games journalist difficulty, because there's been all these videos of games journalists where they're like, again, I'm referring to the groups of the publications and stuff like that, where they'll be playing a new game and providing a review for it, and they overlay their commentary on top of the gameplay footage, and it's like a 4-year-old is playing the game. Like, do you remember the Doom Eternal gameplay that IGN released, or maybe it was Polygon? God, I got it. Remind me to show you that later, because it is ridiculous. And there's also Cuphead. There's a Cuphead tutorial, and the guy who's like writing about Cuphead, he spends like 5 minutes or something in the tutorial that is like, here's how you jump and double jump. Like, it's like,
They just have reporters being like, well, I would have liked the game, but the first level was too hard and I couldn't get any further.
Yeah, it's like okay, I really don't like the get good argument, but really get better.
Get better,
Get
yeah.
better at least.
Or
Like,
get someone else to provide the footage for it.
or get average.
Yeah,
like,
get
just
average.
average. Like the average gamer, I'm telling you, the average gamer is not that awful. Like, I'm not expecting everybody to be like, you know, one-shotting bosses in Elden Ring at level 1. But like, I do expect somebody who's reporting on a video game to be able to like to reasonably experience the game as an average person would. Because that is not the average player's experience at all.
Part
like,
of
it's
that
just
too
not.
has to do with the nature that, I mean, they're selecting for writers. They're not selecting for gamers.
That's exactly what I mean. It's like you're a journalist first, and then a gamer second.
Right, which I think does still have a place, right? But I do see that. You see that in anything where it's like people just make comments. Like I think about it in the political space where like a journalist will ask just a dumb question or won't push back in the right way, and I'll just be like, what are you doing? Like, do you not know anything? Like, or even just like simple things like mispronouncing place names and stuff like that. Like, I get pretty antsy about that sort of stuff, but that's because they're not. There is a degree to which they should be selecting and are selecting for people with a breadth of knowledge and in the particular fields. But like, I would imagine the way it works is somebody's like applies to 50 things, especially with something like online journalism, game journalism, writing these random fucking articles. Like, it's like, okay, so I applied to a gardening magazine, Kotaku, and you know what I mean?
And Carpenter Weekly.
Yeah.
And like, yeah.
Exactly. And so it's like, oh, I just happened to get the gaming job. Like, okay, I guess I'll have to like buy an Xbox,
Yeah,
like some
I'm a
kind
gamer
of.
now.
Guess I better move back into my mom's basement like some sort of virgin loser, right? They just right off the bat just hate it.
Well, there's also the fact that like I say fact, citation needed. I'm pretty sure that these jobs are paid horribly. Like
The journalists? Oh yeah. Oh,
Terribly
writing?
low.
Oh yeah.
like I mean, especially now, fucking ChatGPT can write your articles for you. Shit.
I don't know if ChatGPT can be that fucking like bitter about gamers. Though.
Yeah, true. You got to give it some pretext in the prompt. Like, make sure you're really salty and you just don't like gamers, but you have to write this article.
Yeah.
And now, a word from one of our many sponsors.
From the man who brought slap fighting to America, Dana White presents the Ultimate Biting Championship. Watch as dental heavyweights go tooth to tooth in the bloodiest sports event of the year. Find out who will gnaw away at the competition and who will be chewed up and spit out. And now presenting our celebrity host, Mike Tyson. Mike, get Joe Rogan's ear out of here.
Speaking of ChatGPT, its quality apparently is going down.
Yes. Yes, this is one I can actually speak to with hopefully a little bit of authority. The theory is that the quality of what's coming out of the large language models is going down because they are Ouroborosing almost, like snake that eats itself. When you make a large language model, you have to take in data as sample data, and so the objective of this model is to imitate human language, right? So you take in a whole shitload of human language, like on Reddit and news sites and all this kind of stuff, all over the internet. But the problem now is that some of the data that's being scraped is large language model generated data, right? So like if people are using large language models to generate data and post it in those places, now if you're scraping those places for data, you're not getting human language. You're getting human language, but you're not just getting human language. You're also getting emulation of human language. So now you're trying to train this model that is an emulation of human language, but it's actually becoming an emulation of emulations of human language. And intuitively, you could understand why this might be problematic, because you kind of just you recursively lower the quality of the stuff that you're taking in, and it reduces the quality of the outputs and all this kind of stuff. But I have heard some people theorize that we may have irreparably lowered the quality of large language models going forward because of how we've polluted data sets with large language model generated content. Because now you can't ever scrape Twitter or Reddit or news
anything without getting lots of
potentially running into AI generated content. And it could be the case that actually doesn't even matter after a certain point. Like we might reach a point where it's like, well, yes, we've lowered the ability of this language model to imitate human language, but we could reach a point where it's like, well, you don't read human language on the internet anymore. You read some human language and some AI language. And so if we get to a point where it's like it's more distributed, that maybe we reach a point where, well, you're not even trying to emulate human language anymore. You're just trying to emulate what's happening, the language that's happening on the internet, the language on Twitter, the language on Reddit, whatever. And in doing that, you are going to take in AI generated content as a sample, but maybe it doesn't even matter. Like maybe it's like that you're not trying to imitate two humans talking anymore. You're just trying to imitate what's happening on the internet.
Exactly.
And that's like a really weird dystopian thing for me to think about.
Yeah, it's a little dystopian, but I also consider that too with the fact that you would imagine that they're probably also scraping lots of data of people miswriting stuff and people just saying dumbass shit or falsehoods, because there's tons of crap on the internet. Mm-hmm. So, would it be that much worse than the worst stuff that's on the internet already? In terms of, not the worst as in the most problematical, but just the most corrupted, crappy forms of human language that are prevalent on the internet. Why wouldn't that also have a degradational impact?
It does. But I think the problem is more about control in your data set. Like, if you imagine that I'm training a language model, or I'm training an AI to like recognize pictures of a certain thing, like pictures of pizza, right? And I feed it a library of like 10,000 pictures of pizza. Eventually it will get really good at knowing what a pizza looks like, right? But if I pollute that library with pictures of things that are not quite pizza but close, then the network is going to start to think that things are pizza when they're not. And so over time, if you can't control for something like that, it's going to make it harder to have a good final product, because you want to be in control of your data set as much as possible. And so if previously it didn't matter, right? Because we would just suck up everything on the internet, and like 99.9% of it is human generated, and so it's fine, right? So previously it didn't matter. We just suck it all up, and it doesn't matter if it's right or like accurate. It's just like the law of large numbers. You're just going to kind of get there eventually, right? Like enough people have talked about what the diameter of the Earth is that, well, maybe that's a bad example. That's more contentious than it should be these days.
All things on the internet are contentious.
But yeah, it's like, law of large numbers. You consume enough of it that eventually, so yeah, it's like this, it's this slow degradation of the quality of the data set in a way that you can't control for. Yeah, it's interesting. I actually also read an article that said OpenAI, which is a company that owns ChatGPT, this is a misconception, and a lot of people think ChatGPT is just like the general overall term for this type of thing, but it's not. ChatGPT is a large language model. It just so happens to be the most popular one. And GPT is like an acronym for like, I think it's like generative. I can't remember. Put it on the screen. But yeah, it's like it's more of an acronym that represents like the type of language model that it is. But anyway, so OpenAI, they charge subscriptions for like the premium version of ChatGPT. You get like more access, you get access to a newer model.
You get 4 rather than 3.5 or 3 or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and they're reporting that their subscription revenue is down a lot, like a lot. Like we're talking double-digit percentages. And the theory, this is pretty wild. The theory is that it's down because students are off school for the summer, and that the students were heavily using ChatGPT to, I'm going to say, help with homework, help with their studying. And now they're not in school, so now they cancel their subscription. They don't need to use it right now. Now that is a spooky thought. So just let that one percolate. I see it's like your eyes are you're going full Vietnam on me right now.
Well, it's just like, yeah, it's just the degradation of human learning that is troubling for me.
Yeah.
You know, especially, I mean, you look at the issues that we're having online with just the spread of conspiratorial thought. Like, there's just, people are not learning what they need to learn. And this isn't helping with that. I don't know how to articulate that very well right now, but I'm just, wow.
Well, if I can be a little bit radical for a second, it's possible that this is a good thing in the long run, because it's possible that this will lead to reform of school systems and reform of how we test, how we assess, how we know if somebody's learning what they need to know or not. Because it's not quite as simple as just making kids write book reports anymore. Now, I'm not at all trying to imply that teachers don't do a good job of this. I don't blame teachers at all. I've had amazing teachers. I know you have as well. I've had friends who had amazing teachers. Like, I don't blame the teachers for this. What I blame is outdated curricula and outdated design of what kids are actually. And when I say kids, I guess I should say like
learners,
yeah, because it's not just elementary school, high school; it's also college, university. I might hope that this leads to a reform in what it means to actually learn, like in an institutional setting. Because in a lot of ways, the school system failed me and failed people that I know, in the sense that it just wasn't, it didn't fit, non-neurotypical students. And it didn't fit students with specific needs that required extra attention or extra involvement from the teacher. It didn't fit students who were overstimulated or understimulated. And it's just like, there's all these problems with it.
Well, I can tell that the education system isn't working well. Just look at the abundance of Xbox users and Republicans.
Yeah, true. Yeah, we need a PS5 class. This is why PlayStation.
So I guess
Plus is
I guess
better.
Sony is for Democrats, right? I mean, if
That
Xbox,
must be the case.
right?
Yeah,
Sony
yes,
is for Democrats. Okay, you heard it here first, folks.
Jeez,
Actually,
thanks,
Kotaku first, but
Yeah, well.
implicitly Kotaku. But we just sussed out and made explicit what they were trying
Thank you,
to.
Kotaku. Very cool. Very good job. But yeah, I think it's I think I tend to be a little bit more on the optimistic, encroaching on naive even side compared to you when it comes to this kind of stuff. But I'm hoping that it's kind of a shakeup and not one that has too high of a consequence, really. Because I would love to see more methods of I guess you would call it assessment that are more individualized and more centered around, not just checking all the boxes, but actually approaching each student as an individual learner. And the other problem too is that in a lot of places in I think both Canada and the U.S. teachers are incredibly overworked. Like they have large class sizes, too large, like class sizes that are too large, and they don't have the resources to be able to attend to individual needs of individual students. Especially now compared to like maybe 20, 30 years ago when we didn't know as much about like learning disabilities or like non-neurotypical like states of the learners and stuff like that. So I'm hoping maybe the technology can kind of help with that side of it too, in the sense that maybe we can approach some kind of Pareto principle, 80-20 rule, where 80% of the heavy lifting is done by technology, and that 20% that each student needs to kind of carry them over the line, which is more individual, could be the role that the teacher plays, that the human teacher plays, is what I'm saying.
All right, you're really starting to scare me now, but please continue.
Well, just the sense that like, if you could, and it doesn't have to be a language model, it doesn't have to be AI, it doesn't have to be, we've had the technology to do something like this for ages, where you could, I mean, everybody who's worked a desk job knows that every couple of years you get some whack HR training where you got to watch these videos and answer these stupid questionnaires. Like for adults, that doesn't play very well. It's pretty fucking annoying. But for kids, like that could work great. You could gamify it. You could like, and that could take huge loads off of the teacher. And then again, it's only 80-20, right? So that 80%, the bulk learning, could be done through technology, through more efficient manner. And then that could leave the teachers with more room to like assess individual needs of students. Like little Timmy is specifically struggling with his like, past tense verbs or whatever. Like, so I'm going to help him specifically with that. I'm going to look through this student's work and get a better idea of like exactly what they need help with. Whereas they don't have the ability to do that. At least they didn't when I was in high school. I'd be shocked if they do now.
Yeah. I mean, I one thing I will say is I kind of feel like one of the big issues, you're right, there is a greater awareness, say, for learning disabilities and that sort of thing. But also the information environment, I mean, this is with this ChatGPT stuff and the plagiarism with ChatGPT kind of speaks to, the information environment around children has radically altered in the last couple of decades in a way that I think we're still coming to terms with. I mean, I see, and I don't mean to sound like some sort of Luddite anti-technology person. I'm not. I just think that there's a lot that we don't understand about its impact, especially stuff like social media, right? And I'm actually writing something at the moment that I'm not ready to release yet, but it kind of describes, what I see as my concern about, I guess I'm having a little trouble figuring out how exactly. I'm going to leave that one for another day. I got to write that down,
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, cliffhanger. Well, nice. I don't think anybody's hanging on my words here. They're just saying, okay, on to the next thing here, buddy.
I am. Come on, give yourself some credit, buddy. You're my best friend. Come on.
I appreciate that. Thanks, buddy.
Of course, man.
So, what else do you want to? We were going to talk about SAG-AFTRA.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, some union news. I just want to say we are very pro labor action. We're very pro union here at Citation Needed. So, power to the people.
At least while we're the only guys working on the project. Once we have employees,
yeah, true. So the Writers Guild of America has been on strike for a bit. I don't know exactly how long, but they've been on strike for a while. The key reasons for their strike, as I understand it, have to do with there's a specific word, residual, I think is the word, residual payments on like streaming sites and stuff like that, and intellectual property rights with regard to AI. So basically, the writers, they want to get better residuals from streaming because their residuals
are jack shit,
awful. Like I'm talking like
pennies.
The guy, I read that the writer who did the oh gosh, you know what? It was a really key episode of a particular Marvel series where like a certain character like appeared for the first time in the series. It was like a big crossover moment, a very popular episode. The lead writer got like a $400 check in residuals for it, and that was it. And this is like Marvel. Like it was like some crazy crazy shit like that.
That's a big check from what I've seen too.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, they got a $400 check. That's fat, even though we're talking about like $1 billion franchise.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
So better residuals, and then the other thing is they don't want studios to be able to just like,
ChatGPT the scripts.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll take the scripts that you've written for me, thank you, and I'm just gonna feed them through a large language model and generate the next season. Like, which I think is a totally fair thing to be like, no, fuck you. I don't want you to do that. No, like put this in the contract, put this in the collective bargaining agreement. Like,
well, and I would say that this is one of those places where, and I don't know that consumers appreciate this, but on something like that, because I'm very skeptical about the quality of content that large language models, at least at this point, are even able to produce. I mean, I've not been. I think that there's a lot of utility to them. Like, for example, in coding, right, and other sorts of processes where you can really make things efficient. But as it comes to like creative stuff, I think that like ultimately the writer, we don't know it yet, but I think the writers are saving us from like a lot of jank. A lot of jank.
We are very far from our deep blue moment with ChatGPT. There's no, we're not approaching a time where, George R.R. Martin gets outdone by ChatGPT 4 for the next Game of Thrones script. Like, we are nowhere close to that. Now, we might be at a stage where the average person, like or maybe even the average writer, I think that's a stretch, but like the average person can't output something that's as good as GPT. That could be the case, but we're not even close.
We're not even there. No, we're not even there. And the thing is even if I think ChatGPT is more effective perhaps at writing than a lot of people, but in terms of actual ideas, and this is kind of coming back to the thing where it's like these large language models are dependent upon reams of information produced by humans.
Yeah.
Right? And we've seen once they start getting fed their own content, they start going haywire. They start auto-cannibalizing. The content degrades, and it almost seems like a rule, which means that, well, if we outsource all, like, there will not be a capacity for new things. Things will either be iterations of old things based on human content that is no longer being produced because all the humans have been laid off, right? And nobody's producing new stuff. Or it's just, like, perpetually worse. Like, I just don't see, it hasn't got to that point where people imagine it to be thinking, and I'm not as well versed on this stuff as you are, but people imagine it to be thinking, and it's just the opposite of the case. You know what I mean? It is not thinking. And again, this isn't to say it isn't oppressive, it isn't groundbreaking, it isn't revolutionary, and even that we might not get there eventually. But yeah, as of right now, I think it's kind of like I've seen papers, written by ChatGPT where I'm like, this is a really bad paper.
Yeah.
And my concern is actually more that, especially with the kids will start thinking that this is actually good product. Yeah. Because that's their frame of reference. Like, that's my biggest concern, is actually that degrading impact will be caught up in that degradation, and our standards will shift, and especially generationally so, where it's like, well, kids are used to this stuff, so they just think things are supposed to be jank as shit. You know what I mean? Like, I just,
we embrace the jank, but we don't embrace the jank that much.
Yeah, we don't embrace procedurally generated jank. Okay, it needs to be original jank.
Yeah, no recursive jank in my house.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. But yeah, so SAG-AFTRA. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with. I haven't been paying great attention to it, but I've been, I don't know if you saw, what's the guy's name? He did he's got the gruff voice. Ron Perlman.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw Ron Perlman, but he was like, apparently somebody at one of these meetings, he was like really ruthless. He's like, apparently one of these guys at these meetings was saying, we're just going to let them strike until they start losing houses and stuff. Well, guess what, buddy? We know who said that. We know where you stay, and there's more than one way to lose a house. It's like, oh,
damn. Fuck. Jeez, this guy's embracing the Hellboy role a little too much. Jeez.
Yeah, or like, he was Sons of Anarchy too, right? I think that's the Sons of Anarchy coming out, where it's like,
yeah.
But, at the same time, I don't usually like these calls to violence at all. I'm against it, and I don't know that that's what he's trying to say, but implicitly, it's pretty clear he's trying to say. But there's something satisfying about that. I'm not just going to say that that's a good thing. I shouldn't be satisfied by violent talk. There's something satisfying about Ron Perlman.
It
just
scratched
like,
a little caveman itch in my brain.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say the thing about Matt Damon, where he was on for I think it was the Oppenheimer premiere, where he was talking about the strike, and he was like, he's very pro labor action, like he's very very of course, right, like who's surprised by that, and so he has this whole interaction with somebody who's interviewing him, and he says like. His statement opens with like, strikes harm everybody. Like, it's tough for the productions and for the actors, for everybody. Like, we don't like it. But, and then he lists all the reasons why the labor action is good, right? And he says like residuals are the difference between getting healthcare and not getting healthcare for some people, because you have to make over a certain amount to get healthcare for that year, right? So he's like, it's super important. Like, we have to get fair deals. Like, it's, this is a matter of life and death for people, right? He's very pro labor action. And fucking Deadline, this like Hollywood publication, like basically quotes like just the first part of it, where he's like, up until he starts saying good stuff, and they don't include the good stuff. So they make it look like he's like, yeah, strikes are bad. I don't like them. It's like, and that's it. It's like, whoa, like what the, and they changed it so fast. I swear, like somebody in Matt Damon's corner, some agent or some publicist,
lawyer,
probably called him up and was like, "You fucks need to change this yesterday, or else." And
issue. They probably did. They issue.
They did. Yeah, they issued a correction and an apology, and yeah, they posted the full quote. But oh god, I thought that was so like that's another. See, that's what I mean, right? That's like it's I get a little bit depressed about like seeing stuff like that in journalism, because it the more I see it, the less faith I have in organized journalism, even though I know there's a lot of really good reasons to have organized journalism and stuff like that. But it's just, I see shit like, and granted, it's fucking Kotaku and Deadline. Like, I guess I shouldn't have my standards that high for these publications, but
it's like going to the National Enquirer and being like, what?
Yeah.
Why are they saying Biden's a lizard man? that's their niche.
Jeez. At least they didn't call him an Xbox gamer. That would have been scathing. Yeah, but I'm so SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild, has joined the Writers Guild on strike. So now SAG-AFTRA's on strike, Writers Guild's on strike. I've heard rumblings about IATSE being on strike as well. That's the Alliance of Theater and
Light and Sound guys, right?
It's like theater production people. So like
light, sound, key grip, best boy, all those guys.
Yeah.
The Carpenters, the blah blah blah, right?
Yeah. So I've heard rumblings that even IATSE's considering striking.
I'm surprised
too.
that they weren't. I mean, I guess that makes sense because they're kind of in a it makes sense that the Screen Actors Guild would join up earlier because it's a creatives strike. Not to say those guys aren't creative, but they're not in the creative side of it. They're in the production side of it. So it's like they're not worried about the guy that like actually physically has to move stuff into the building. Isn't like, well, ChatGPT is not going to take my
the guy who's building sets and like stuff like that. Yeah, maybe there's less of a concern there. I mean, who knows? Maybe by the time this episode releases, they'd be on strike by now. I mean, if they are, we'll tell you. We'll throw a image over me right now and put a sad face on me. Actually, not a sad face.
Yeah,
I guess
you
I'd be
say
like,
that, and then that Deadline's going to pick up on that.
Yeah,
they're going to be like, Troy.
Oh, what have I done? What have I done? They've screwed me. Sad face that it's not resolved yet. That's the sad face. I'm pro labor action. If you don't get what you deserve, strike. Do it.
You know who's going to get? Yeah, and you know who's going to get what they deserve is that guy who made the House comment. Ron Perlman will see to that. He's going to get what he deserves.
No, Ron Perlman, don't dox me, please. Oh man, he's really mad he didn't get Cable in Deadpool. That's how I always pictured him, as Cable. I can't even remember the name of the guy who actually got it.
Which one's Cable?
Cable's like the time traveling guy. This like he's got like. Maybe he's a cyborg. Maybe he's not a cyborg. I don't know. But he was in Deadpool 2, I think.
You know what? Deadpool 2, I think, is one of those ones that I
tried watching a couple times, or I watched halfway through a couple times. I don't know what happened with that. Not criticizing the movie, just saying that I guess must have just been in like a fugue state or something.
Yeah,
you ever do that? You're like, I've seen this movie, don't remember a thing from it.
That happens to me with like YouTube videos and like TV shows. I don't watch a lot of movies. You could probably guess this about me, but I don't really have the attention span to sit for 2.5 hours and be like, yes, like really focus and pay attention. I've had so many cases where like my wife and I start watching a show and we watch one episode and I'm like, do you want to watch the rest? like because I've got my attention now. I'm paying attention now. This won't last. So how about we just binge this today? And so a ton of series we've like binged in like one day on Netflix or whatever. But damn, it feels like they don't really do that much anymore. It feels like they're really serializing a lot of stuff, like just putting out like one episode a week for a couple months or whatever.
Yeah, because what happens is people are like, I only want this one show, so I just binge it and I just spend a month on Netflix.
Yeah,
right?
well, also the press, like you only get press for a week versus getting press every Friday
release,
for 2 months, right?
Good
3
point.
months.
Yeah. Yeah, my father was pretty pissed off about that. He's like, "What? I gotta wait." It's like, dude, you were born in like '54. Like, relax. Like, you used to have to like wait a month.
Whatever
to see
happened to back in my day?
Yeah.
What the hell is this?
Yeah.
That's when you tell him back in my day.
So you see the Twitter payouts?
No, what's going on with that?
Well, creators on Twitter are now receiving revenue share from the ads that appear under their tweets.
Okay. What I don't mean this in an insulting way, but what is a creator on TikTok, on Twitter?
On Twitter, well, I mean, theoretically, firstly, you have to have a blue check, obviously.
Right.
And you know what? I kind of wish I'd thrown some articles at you before the show so you could kind of explain more of it to me. But Musk was saying stuff along the lines of, the way we figure this out is how many blue check people are looking at your post, because blue check, we can verify that that's a person, and that's what we determine the ad on. But it was like, wasn't the blue check sold so you didn't have to? One of the things is that you wouldn't have to see ads, but now they're basing ad revenue sharing on how many ads those guys are seeing.
Actually, it's funny. He actually stated, I think, very early on that it was limited ads and not no ads. I think he very specifically did that for this reason. So it was like,
so you only see one janky wish.com clone as opposed to 3.
as opposed to 10, probably. Yeah.
But yeah, so it was interesting because, like, what's this? Is it Andrew Tate?
That's one of them, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Tristan's the less popular one.
Yeah, Andrew Tate. Yeah, the one. Yeah, I guess actually they both have legal troubles right now, but it was Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate was paid. Ian Miles Chong, I think, got some money. Basically a bunch of just like the dregs of Twitter. Like, it's very obviously arbitrary, because I don't know if you've ever heard of Cat Turd.
I mean, I have heard of a Cat Turd, but what
Cat
does
Turd
that mean?
is a Twitter personality who's just this like right-wing goofball, like who I'm actually surprised like Musk has like interacted with Cat Turd. People would always say, "Oh, Musk is interacting with that guy named Cat Turd," which is pretty fucking laughable. And the guys, the quality of the guy's takes are as you would expect from a guy named Cat Turd. But he was like, "Oh wow, I got a total of like $0 from this. And it's like clearly like he should have been making as much money. Like, he is a blue check who's getting like lots and lots of views. There's no reason he shouldn't have got sent money, which indicated this is just kind of like a PR stunt, and it's kind of just they're just kind of arbitrarily writing checks to people they want to write checks to. Twitter seems to be in a lot of financial and just general business disarray.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd call it trouble yet. That's what people are like, "Oh, Twitter's gonna be dead any moment now." I've been seeing people say that since he's taken over the platform. I don't buy that. I think it's a pet project. I've said this many times. It's a political thing. It's not a business thing. So I don't think it could be understood as a purely business thing. But yeah, I don't know what the hell he's doing. It kind of boggles the mind.
I'm interested. I don't know how they I wonder how they determine that some like the reading of a tweet, because like I talked to you about this before with the API thing, where it's like, well, the API doesn't really care if you read it or not; it just cares that it sent it to you. So it makes you think, like, what metrics do they have? Like, do they
Well, in the ads, they're ad revenue sharing based on the ads that are in the comments section. So if I open a tweet, but I don't look at the comments, is that, and say I was a blue check, so I'm being counted for this, is that person not getting ad revenue sharing? Or is it when I open the tweet, then it just assumes it serves you the ad in the form of the comments, whether or not you're looking at the comments?
Yeah, so I mean, if I wanted to be, so social media companies have the ability to do this, and they do this. I know Facebook does this. I know TikTok does this. I would not be surprised if Twitter does this as well. But they have the ability to measure how long you stay on a particular post. Like if you're scrolling through Facebook, the app knows if you're scrolling or not. The app knows the position of your screen, what post is visible at any given moment. The app knows if you stop and read. The app knows if you stop. Technically, it doesn't know that you read, but most of the time, if you stop, it means you're reading, right? So, TikTok knows if you swipe away from something really fast or if you stay on it for a while. I would not be surprised if Twitter employs that same functionality to while you're scrolling on your phone, if you stop on a certain tweet, they're gonna be like, okay, all right.
There's like memes, people just dunking on Musk because he just comes out with these things. User seconds are at an all-time high this month, and like, what kind of metric? User seconds? Like he's got all these, but that's exactly what you're describing, right? Like they have to determine that somehow. But I just again wonder, like, I mean, I really do think like 90% of the money spent on ads online are just wasted. I mean, people say that about advertising in general. Maybe it's not really the case, but I do think that there's a lot of like, it's a lot of like hopes and dreams.
Yeah. I think that. So I'm very particular about how I consume, or more often don't consume advertising, and I do sometimes get advertised things that I'm interested in that I end up actually looking into. Like that does happen, and so I know that there's value in advertising. The problem that I have is I don't like when every single thing that I use bombards me with ads. Like there's a certain limit that I reach where I'm just like, God, I don't want to see any ads anymore. So like, on YouTube, like I actually give YouTube money to like not show me ads. Like I also get the music subscription, and like, it's not all, I know I could just block ads myself, but regardless, like I consume YouTube enough that I don't want to see ads on it. But like there's still ads on my Facebook, and I go on Facebook probably like, 5-10 minutes a day or whatever. There's still ads like on my phone, like when I scroll through like the Google News feed or whatever, I still see ads there. Those ads are so shit, by the way. Like, those mobile game ads where it's just like this weird like
a fish and their piranhas are trying to get at it, and then you draw a line, and oh no!
Yeah, it's like the person in the mobile game is always so shitty. Like that's the games journalists. Like record. You know what? That's how they make their living on the side, is they record gameplay for mobile game ads. That's got to be it.
I'd buy that. I don't know that we have a better explanation, so we're just going to go with that. I think that Kotaku has similar standards to how they report, so we're going with it.
Yeah.
So I was sending some stuff, some footage from the Family Leadership Summit, which is like a Christian conservative political summit, I guess, that they have in the United States. And a bunch of the Republican presidential candidates were making their rounds there. And I caught a interaction between Tucker Carlson, who I guess they had hosting some of the conference.
What a wild decision, but okay.
Well, you know what? But it shows. You know what? But is it? I mean, they know their audience. I mean, I watched it. Basically, the interaction. Mike Pence got to the point where he was interrupting Tucker Carlson, and it was getting pretty heated between the two of them. And it's one of those things. Tucker Carlson's one of the few men on the planet that can make me root for Mike Pence.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's fascinating, but it's because
the rarest Mike Pence W.
Yeah,
the rarest.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, it was on the Ukraine conflict, and this is the party of Ronald Reagan. And when Mike Pence was making strong points, okay, and Tucker Carlson was talking shit and just nonsensical stuff, but it was like those please clap, like remember the Jeb, when Mike Pence would speak, crickets. So it's like, well, it appears that they know their audience, and there's this growing sort of isolationist or nativist trend in the Republican Party, which has always been there to an extent, but it really is the Republican Party that, and it's Trump, I would argue, that's largely unleashed this, but it's beyond Trump. I mean, we saw that there was 70 Republicans voted for amendments that were brought by Marjorie Taylor Greene, which would strip like hundreds of millions of dollars of funding from Ukraine. And it was supported by like 70 members of the Republican conference, which is like, nowhere near enough. Like, it was hammered, right? The Democrats were completely against it, and the mainstream Republicans are completely against it, right? Like, there's 450, I don't remember. There's like 400 seats in the Congress
like
or something.
between 400 and
357, I don't know.
I think it's 4 something.
Yeah, something like that.
Up.
Yeah, we'll throw it up. We're Canucks. We don't know that shit.
Yeah.
But I wish I could actually say that with honesty. I know more about American politics than I do Canadian. We're obsessed with you guys up here. But anyways, that's another matter. So it was just, I don't know. I don't got much to say about it. I didn't really prepare very well before the show in regards to it. I just figured we'd maybe just shoehorn some political shit in at the end here. But
yeah. Oh, it's always good to riff on Cucker Tarlson over there. So.
Did you just call him Cucker Tarlson?
I think
Cucker. I thought you said Cucker Tarlson, but then I said Cucker Tarlson.
I'm going to claim that was a Freudian slip.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, no, I mean, his viewership is crashing. His Twitter show. Yeah, his Twitter show, like. And again, I don't know how Twitter, because it said like he had like 150 million views. It's like, yeah, how many user seconds did he really have there, Musk boy?
True.
Give me a fucking.
Hit us with the user seconds on that one.
Yeah. Most recently, he had a 2.5-hour interview with Andrew Tate, which is like, and people thank God, conservatives are coming out and saying, "What are you doing, dude?" Like, it's so. The party and the people that are so apparently, incensed about sexual trafficking, which they should be. It's an evil thing. But then they're inviting a person who's an accused sexual trafficker who right now, either everything he said online was a lie or what he's charged with, he committed. Like, it's either he's a serial liar about being a sex trafficker,
which would be a better outcome.
Because it
would mean that nobody was trafficked.
Right.
So that would be a better outcome.
It would be. Or he is a sex trafficker. And it's like, either one of those options, why are you making this guy your martyr? Why are you making this guy somebody that people look up to? Like, it's mind-boggling to me. It's kind of indicative of the fact that, like, if you play on our team, there's no rules. Right? The rules are something we impose on the other side. And it's dangerous. It's a dangerous move in our politics.
Yeah, that's why when I see something like, some cringe Kotaku shit or like some, it's so hard to remind yourself to do this, but you have to try and like give a little bit and like try and see things from a way that you wouldn't normally see it and challenge yourself a little bit. Because, yeah, if you don't, then, man, just get these stupid team sports. It's just like so non-productive. I know it sounds like, ooh, enlightened centrist, but it's like, no, literally, like, it's just not productive. Like, tell me that Tucker Carlson interviewing Andrew Tate was productive. Like, yeah.
Well, and it's like, you know what? The enlightened centrist critique is like, so, I mean, we're at a point where the far right and the far left are holding hands on Ukraine, on all these other matters. It's like, yeah, enlightened centrist, you fucking lunatics. Yeah, actually. Fucking morons. And like, that isn't, I'm not saying that about, like, I'm talking about the fact that, like, the extremes.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not talking about, like the stuff with the Republicans. Only the craziest 70 Republicans backed MTG's amendments on Ukraine. The mainstream of the party, including people who are very conservative, are on side with Ukraine. I'm not saying conservatives are dumb or socialists are dumb. I'm not saying that at all. It's just when you're such an ideologue and you just live in an informational bubble, and you just can't even you can't change with the world. That's just a dangerous thing. That's a dangerous thing, and it's the purpose of democratic institutions is to deliberate and to compromise and to, lead our society forward that way. And when we devolve into these team sports further and further, we make democratic governance untenable, right? And that's part of the purpose.
I've one criticism of what you said, and it's that Marjorie Taylor Greene should not be afforded the MTG acronym, because that is for Magic the Gathering, and it always will be. So you keep that acronym out your fucking mouth. And I stand up and I slap you in the face.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. It's well, you know what? If Marjorie Taylor Greene
Thank you.
was a Magic the Gathering card, she would be
Invoke prejudice.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh God, I'm so glad you make that joke. Well, that is I think, stellar place for us to end this episode. If you have any questions, critiques, or citations that we desperately needed, please leave them in the comments below. And if you liked what you saw, please subscribe and give us a like and let us know. That is it for today. Thank you so much, and adios. Go to the fucking podcast.